Hi trendsetters, how are you all going? I think next week's going to be an important week in this story. So let's recap where we are with the Manafort saga. So back when Rick Gates and Paul Manafort were arrested, intrepid viewers will remember, I predicted Gates would fold by lunchtime, which he did, and that Manafort would hold out, and then eventually roll over on Trump. And that is, of course, what happened. He was probably holding out for a pardon, which would be folly because Trump exhibits no loyalty. So I think it was a mix, really, of him hoping for a pardon, but also being someone who's mixed with powerful leaders, complete demigods of very bent countries. He was used to people being able to pay money and just walk away from these things. I think he'd forgotten he was actually an American. So here we were, Manafort held out. Then he said, okay, Mueller, I'll tell you X, Y, and Z. And he did. And then he was due for sentencing this next week. And he obviously decided to part with some more significant information because Mueller asked for an extension just for this additional information. So I thought, let's see what is this story about. So we're looking at Mueller and Manafort. What was the extra information that he had? Okay. Now we know Mueller's not short of detailed information. He's had a very effective team. So it had to be something quite juicy. So let's have a look. I'm going to do a Celtic cross on this. Oops. I think that was just bad shuffling, viewers, rather than the universe speaking, so I'll keep shuffling. Manafort. What's Manafort got to say? Here we go. Well, for the first three cards here, Manafort in the centre, the Fool walking off a cliff. As I remind you often, particularly those learning tarot, the Fool is not as simple as that. But in the context of Manafort and what he's decided to do, it's all or nothing. I'm not saying he's done it foolishly. I think he got to the point of no return, whereas he was looking at many decades in jail and he felt he had no choice in the end but to step off the cliff and give it his best shot. When we see a famous Lena digression, when we see the sentencing for Michael Cohen and Manafort and these others, we'll have a good indication of how close to the bone their information sits, because these guys are looking at long sentences. So if they end up getting 2 years, 5 years, 6 years, you know they've given up a lot. So he is, you could say, the compromised fool. Earlier than this was the Lovers. I'm not saying his wife, mistress in this context. The Lovers is often about deals being made. And Trump prides himself on the art of the deal. Trump is a very crude player. Manafort is not necessarily a very sophisticated player, but he leaves Trump in the shade in terms of the significant international deals he has done. They have altered the course of how the politics of different countries have run. So just to remind you, he's operated in some of the absolute worst regimes around the world. And most recently, leading into the Trump campaign, was the Ukraine. So I think it's speaking to those deals. And across that, you have, this is him as Manafort, the successful merchant. I've always felt with this card, there's an element of I don't care what it takes. I will do that to make money. This is a card of emotion, but it's emotional satisfaction from making money in this context. Okay, so he's got the Nine of Cups. So this is telling Manafort's primary story, if you like. Underneath the root, what I call the GOP card, but it's the fictional happy families. He thought living this life, which was actively manipulating governments and oppositions to governments in different countries for the outcome that he was brought in to do, would make him happy. He didn't care. Paul Manafort is a sociopath, actually. I'm beginning to think of it. It's all very well to describe these guys as businessmen, you know. But I'm seeing emotional fulfillment from what he's done. And it's over and above the money. These aren't Pentacles cards. These are emotional fulfillment for doing very corrupt deals. Very corrupt deals. So there's a sociopathic element to Manafort. So over and above, you know, remember the story on the ostrich jacket that cost $14,000 or whatever it did. I'm sure that's far from the worst this man has done. He's operated in very shady places. But yeah, there's a telltale sign that he got pleasure from other people's misery, because the pleasure came from the power of just being able to influence it. Now, further back, we had the Queen of Swords. I seem to remember a female judge in relation to the early Manafort cases. So much has happened that it's piled on top of our memories of the Manafort stuff. I am going to say this is the female judge who was very much part of that early court proceeding. And if not, it's another female attorney who has been instrumental in Mueller's world in bringing this whole case against Manafort. Now, what's on top of this Mueller-Manafort reading? Boo! Quelle surprise! Business dealings over the water. Now, this is often described as waiting for your ship to come in. There is that element, but the 2 and 3 of Wands, trade and commerce, this card in particular is that in the international context. He did the dealings with Russia in order to promote Russia's interest in the Ukraine. And in answer to this overall question, I think this is going to come home to roost with these new developments for Mueller. It's to do with that stuff, I think. Okay. So what else is involved here? Well, yes, lies and deception, and they're in the slight future placement, which is, so we haven't reached the bottom yet. There is still more. I think he's still holding back. I think it's Manafort's lies and deceit, not only to this point, and now he's come clean. This is a darker reading on Manafort than I actually anticipated. I thought the worst was behind him and behind us, in the sense of now we're just going to find out what's happening. This is saying to me there's many more layers of Manafort and his dealings. I'm thinking he could be very, very compromised with Russia here. Okay. So, in this position of what's Manafort thinking at this stage, he's fantasizing about going away. I'm not the only reader to say, I think we're talking witness protection for Manafort and family here because of the oligarch and other connections. I think he's doing this deal as a trade-off for witness protection. They'll probably say he's being sentenced to X, Y, and Z after this, and then he'll evaporate. So the challenges still to this story, yes, it's still ongoing. That's what I'm picking up. We haven't reached the end. So, yes, it's still actively embattled. I think we're talking about Manafort and Mueller, and I think they're butting heads. I think Mueller is saying, I told you, Manafort, if you want the plea deal, you have to tell us everything. And Manafort says, yes, I'll tell you everything. And then they keep finding more stuff that he's lied about. I don't think Mueller's very happy. The vibe on this isn't, wow, I've got a big fish and isn't this great? I think Mueller has the screaming shits with Manafort, actually. What's the atmosphere they're in? This is Mueller, not as the apprentice, because he's far from an apprentice, but appraising the harvest. It could also be Manafort. Have I got enough? In other words, have I given them enough? Can I still hide these certain things? Is it Mueller or is it Manafort, or possibly both? Mueller's probably thinking, have I got enough to give this guy the justice he deserves, in a sense of he has been an international co-conspirator, he's been charged with crimes against the United States, he deserves something really serious that's going to make other people think before they do these things. And or is it Manafort? Either way, they're appraising. I really think they're doing a dark dance between them, these two. This is not straightforward at this late stage. Okay, short-term outcome. Short-term outcome, the Star. It's a very good card, very bountiful, inspiration and hope. Again, is it Mueller or is it Manafort? I am going to do little clarifiers here. The short term meaning, I think, this week. So it's important. I want to do clarifiers on the Seven of Pentacles, the Harvest card, and on the Star. So first, the Seven of Pentacles. These are these cute little baby Sibyllas. Ooh, okay. Sneaking away, and the Star. Reconciliation. Oh, that makes sense. Okay. In the appraisal of the Harvest, the clarifier was voleur, which I think translates as the thief, stealing away. Now I think this is more towards Mueller appraising the Harvest. How far can I trust this thief? How far can I trust this criminal? What will I let him have in exchange? I think, yeah, this is all feeding into this idea that there's more to be done. Here, with the Star card, here are two men, reconciliation, and this is this week in the sense of tarot's rarely exact, but it's very short-term future, and I'm looking at Monday, so I'm going to say that's this week. I think they do reach an agreement. I think this has been happening. Mueller's had the shifts. He's come down finally like a ton of bricks. And they've reached an agreement. See the handshake. Fascinating. Okay, back to the Rider-Waite. So we're going to take it a bit further out from the Monday. All right. Hidden agendas again and further out. Wheel of Fortune. All right. So they've come to an agreement. We've got as far as that. Manafort's kept saying he's telling everything and not. Mueller fed him to the system. Manafort came back and said, no, I will tell you everything. Manafort's going, maybe. They've come to some agreement. But still to come, hidden agendas. So, this is going to need a clarifier too. Is this Manafort playing silly buggers and thinking he can play someone like Mueller, or is it Mueller's agenda? He will make certain things public during the week about Manafort, but there's a bigger story. Please clarify the priestess for me. Okay. This is what's happening here. This is one figure who's not quite happy hearing the news, isn't it? There's an element of being passed on news that you don't want to hear to this card, right? Which would be Manafort. This is part of what I'm realizing with Manafort and his, now I'm confident to say, sociopathic tendencies. He hasn't grasped, even from jail, the deep trouble he's in. The outcome for this reading, the Wheel of Fortune, it is destiny. It will play out in the fullness of time. So just looking here, just reminding you who are learning, each of these strong elements or sort of spiritual figures, you know, we've got the angel and the phoenix and the lion and the winged bull. They're all reading, meaning knowledge. Deep knowledge is coming to this. The High Priestess, apart from hidden agendas, also has implications of deep knowledge. So deep things have been exchanged because there was the reconciliation card. So, but someone's not happy with this. Interesting. But the outcome has been predestined. It almost doesn't matter the machinations of the court system, although that's massively important to be seen to be done. Manafort's made his own bed, and he will have to lie on it. If you play with these very heavy guys, he's looking at the sort of treatment that was meted out to Khashoggi. I'm talking horrendous stuff. So that's why his sane self would want to be arguing for witness protection. Egotistically, he might not think he needs it. We will see what transpires there. He does need it. He really needs it. And his family. If I had been remotely connected to Paul Manafort, I'd be looking at alternative places to live. So what we're going to hear this week will reveal another dimension in the saga, viewers. And I think it is the international component of Trump's campaign, which will be feeding back into the famous meeting and so forth. Buckle up. Okay, bye for now.